All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're getting into what really makes a great poker player. And let me give you a little hint. It's probably not what you're thinking, especially if you've only seen it in the movies.
So, let's just jump right in with the big one, right? What really separates the winning poker players, the ones who always seem to have a huge stack of chips at the end of the night, from everybody else?
You know, if you ask around, most people are going to say it's one of two things. Either you're some kind of math genius or you were just born lucky. And look, those things don't hurt, for sure. But that's not the real secret. That is not the whole story at all.
The secret ingredient, the thing that really gives players a lasting edge at the table, it's all about personality. Yeah, you heard me. It's about your mindset. That's where the real power is. So, okay, let's break this down.
First up, we've got to talk about the foundation. I'm talking about the calculating mind. This is where strategy and patience basically collide to create something really powerful.
And this is super interesting because you've got two sides of the same coin here. You have the analytical thinker, who's all about the numbers and the logic. And then you have the patient player, who's an absolute master of time. They're this perfect balance, because honestly, in poker, you can't really have one without the other and expect to win consistently.
So, let's talk about that analytical thinker first. These are the folks who just thrive on breaking down a messy situation. For them, poker isn't a guessing game. No way. It's a series of puzzles that you solve using logic, data, and probability.
And this is what that looks like in action. They're not sitting there crossing their fingers hoping for a miracle on the river. Nope. They are busy calculating pot odds, figuring out the expected value of every single move. Every decision is based on cold, hard data. They're not trying to get lucky. They're literally trying to make luck irrelevant.
Okay, so the other side of that coin is the patient player. And we've got to be really clear here. Patience in poker is not passive. It's not about just sitting there bored waiting for good cards. It is an active skill. It's all about intense observation and knowing the perfect moment to strike.
So what does that mean? It means even when they've folded a hand, they're not checked out. They're studying every single player at the table. They know poker is a marathon, not a sprint. So they don't make those dumb, expensive mistakes that come from getting bored or frustrated. And in the end, that's how they win. They just outlast and outthink everybody else who can't control their impulses.
All right, so once you've got that logical foundation, we can add the next layer, and this is where it gets really fun. We're talking about the psychological edge. This is the moment you realize poker isn't a game of cards, it's a game of people.
And this creates a really fascinating dynamic. It's a two-part thing. First, you have to be able to read people, figure out what they're thinking, what they're feeling, but then you also need the guts to act on that information and make bold, calculated moves against them.
This is where we meet the mind reader archetype. This is the player with incredible emotional intelligence. They get that every little action at the table, a weird bet size, a quick glance at their chips, a tiny hesitation, it all tells a story. And their entire edge comes from being the best at reading that story.
And their skill set here is huge because it goes two ways. They're amazing at picking up on those little tells from other people, right? But just as important, maybe even more important, they are masters of their own emotions. They don't go on tilt. You know what I'm talking about? That meltdown mode where even great players start throwing their money away out of pure frustration. They just don't do that.
And that's the perfect lead-in to our next trait, the risk taker. Because being able to read someone is what gives you the confidence to take risks against them. But let's be super clear. This is not reckless gambling. We're talking about calculated courage. It's knowing that sometimes a big, bold move is the only right strategic play.
Oh yeah, this is where the real magic happens. A perfectly timed bluff, one that's based on a solid read of your opponent, that can let you steal a pot you had absolutely no right to win. The best risk takers, they balance that aggression with a really sharp eye on the odds. And when they pull the trigger, they can completely change the entire outcome of a hand. Okay, finally, let's talk about the traits that pull all of this together. This is what creates the truly unbreakable player, the kind of person who is just consistently incredibly tough to play against.
And really, it comes down to this ultimate 1-2 punch. You need the flexibility to completely change your strategy in the middle of a game. And then you need the rock-solid confidence to pull off that new plan without a moment's hesitation.
Let's call this player the chameleon. They're the adaptable player. They get that every poker game is a living, breathing thing. The strategy that was crushing it an hour ago could be a total disaster now. So they never, ever have a one-size-fits-all game plan.
And man, this makes them an absolute nightmare to play against.
1 minute, they're super aggressive. The next, they're playing tight and conservative. You can never get a beat on them because they're always changing, always evolving to attack whatever new weakness they've spotted at the table.
And last, but absolutely not least, the confident player. Look, if all those other skills we talked about are the parts of a super high-performance engine, well, confidence is the fuel. Without it, that engine isn't going anywhere. All that brilliant analysis is completely useless if you don't have the confidence to act on it.
It's this deep self-trust that lets a player just act. They don't get paralyzed by fear or start second-guessing themselves. It's what lets them ride out the crazy ups and downs of poker without losing their cool and execute their strategy with total conviction.
All right, so let's just pull this all together for a second. This is a great little summary of all 6 of those traits we just covered and what they really do. You know, from using data to waiting for the right spot, all the way to reading people and having the confidence to make the big play.
So you might be thinking, well, I'm not any of those things. But here's the best part. None of this is set in stone. You're not just born a patient player or an analytical player. These are skills, and skills can be learned. You just have to figure out what you're already good at, be honest about what you need to work on, and then hit the books and the tables. Anyone can build a winning poker personality.
So I'll leave you with this to chew on. Next time you sit down at a poker table, ask yourself, who are you right now? And maybe more importantly, who do you need to become to really take your game to that next level?